I guess we're about ready to get started. Apologize for the little bit of a delay there. Anyway, thank you very much for coming. My name is Walter Holmes, K5WH. Been lucky enough to get the opportunity to speak with you guys because of all the great stuff that we've been doing with balloons, and many of you guys in the room here that have been with us on all of these adventures. And I'm definitely looking forward to many more of those. We're going to try to run through a few of these things. I may go a little bit fast, so please stop me or grab my attention or throw something at me if you need to let me know about something. Okay, here's a few things we want to try to go over. We want to talk just briefly about the history of the South Texas balloon launch team. Some of our large balloons are poppers that we typically do once a year. Our small balloons are floaters, like we launched over here about 10 a.m. this morning, and we'll be doing a few more momentarily right after this. The current and future ideas on trackers, some of the new designs that have come out from overseas, but more importantly, some of our guys here in town even that have designed their own trackers and things like that. So a lot of different ways to get into the hobby. Launch sites, we launch from a couple different places. We'll go into some detail about that. Tracking sites, how do you keep up with these things? We're sending so many in the air all the time. There's a lot of different sites now that are collecting the data and making it available for all of us to go out and see to different websites, whether it's on Whisper, whether it's APRS, sometimes we do both, and things like that. And we'll talk about the differences and show you some of the screens that you can look at what you get, the information that comes out of those. And some contacts in here if you decide you want to get involved or come check it out sometime. So let's kind of rip into it. This is just kind of a simple little logo about our South Texas balloon launch team. Some details here. We were heavily inspired by Bill Brown. Anybody that's been doing balloons knows Bill Brown. He is the man that made all this stuff possible. For us, also with Andy McAllister at W5ACM, kind of the forefather of all of our local balloon launching and everything. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple years ago, and I tell you, it's been really hard to keep up with all the things that he was doing in the past. So many of us are trying very, very hard, and we've never been able to achieve what he's been able to do. So we're still working on that. For us, we're not an official formalized club or anything like that. We're just a bunch of guys that like to throw a lot of money together, send it in the air, and waste it away. But it's a good fun watching it happen, so that's why we do it. We do have a monthly dinner, usually the second Wednesday of every month in the Houston area. And in fact, I guess we have one Wednesday next week, don't we? So coming up here. We also do a follow-up Zoom meeting, 8 p.m. immediately after that. So we go to dinner, have a good time, talk about what we're doing, what works, what doesn't work, what we want to try to do, and then we race home, get on Zoom, where we have several other people that are scattered about the country that have been partnering with us on a lot of these balloon launches that try to stay in touch with what we're doing. We share ideas, find out what worked for them, what doesn't, and then we collaborate a lot about that. We send hardware back and forth overseas and things like that, and trying different things all the time. That's really the fun part. We've been launching balloons for a little over 30 years, the high altitude balloons. And usually we did that once a year. It's a major effort to do that when you're doing these big popper balloons. Several of us in this room here have been out there to the Wharton County Airport and gassing up balloons. The cost of helium has just about shut that, well, more than just about, has definitely shut that down for us. The unfortunate part is a simple 4-foot tank or whatever, it used to cost us about $30, $40, now is over $400, and we need almost 2 tanks to fill up one of our balloons. So the simple little throw-together balloon launches have turned into a major production cost-wise. So that doesn't work very much. So what we've been trying to make up for that with is these little floater balloons that you may have seen over at the booth. It's just 32-inch silver mylar, sometimes 36-inch clear plastic and things like that. But we've been doing those a lot more aggressively. We're trying to do those at least 2 a month now, if not more. And we do see that even more sometimes. depending on weather. That's usually our big one. Now here's one I get beat up about all the time. It's like, oh my God, you're sending a balloon up. Aren't you worried about crashing airplanes everywhere? Well, that's not a problem for us. If you've ever seen our trackers over there at the booth, we're flying these little things that are barely bigger than a quarter. Sometimes some of them are larger. The really large ones are, maybe 2 inches or something like that. They're very, very tiny. We don't measure these things in ounces or pounds. We measure them in grams. They're so light. So typically anywhere from about 7 grams, including the solar panels, up to maybe something like, I don't know, 20 grams, 25 grams, something like that. And that's it. That's all there is to it. So they're very, very light. So part of our exemptions, we're able to not have to worry about that because we meet these criteria here. The criteria here is our payload is definitely less than 4 pounds. Again, if an airplane, a jetliner, or whatever can handle flying in the rain and hail and things like that, these little trackers are many, many times less than that, so no risk at all. We're less than 6 pounds on a multi-package. We don't do that. And we're not doing the multiple payloads together. Now, our rope that we tie off our trackers with is 4-pound fishing line. So again, way less than the 50 that the FAA requires in order to meet this exemption. So here's a picture or some information about our large payload, the large balloons that we have been flying in the past. We typically fly with APRS. Big reason for that is we need the ability to transmit, tell us the location, where they are, where they're going. We can track it and we can find it, more importantly, and recover it, because we usually have a couple $1,000s worth of hardware on these balloons. As I mentioned, APRS is a primary package. A couple of those are usually on there. VHF, UHF crossband. DMR, UHF, single frequency repeater. So basically it's a DMR radio, a commercial high-terror radio programmed to allow it to transmit on one time slot on DMR, and automatically it retransmits on the other time slot. So it's a really clever concept, but unfortunately you have to buy a $1,200 HT to be able to do that. But it works really good. It's lightweight, battery operated from the HT. DVB-T for terrestrial is what we've been flying. We've been talking about switching to the S mode, which is a different video standard for satellite type things like that. But DVB-T is what we've been flying in the past. The beauty of that is sending a balloon, and it goes up to nearly 120,000 feet, and it's transmitting live video coming back. And some of that is just spectacular video, absolutely impressive. You'll see some of the video here in just a moment. So here's what we dream about. A balloon that big would be a lot of fun. Probably not very practical. Disney probably wouldn't appreciate it if we used it, but it'd be great. But we do have some great aspirations. We're very envious of what the Chinese have been able to do to have a steerable balloon. If anybody can tell me where I can get one of these real cheap, hook me up, would you? I'd appreciate it very much. We'd love to be able to have a balloon that would go around the world or whatever and steer it where you want to go. Okay, now here's a collection, kind of a compiled video. Tom Matthews, one of our members that used to be with us, unfortunately another silent key, put together a great video for us, taking all the video that we have on these balloons. We have video cameras that are pointing down. We have them out to the side. We even have one that points straight up, which has been a really great benefit because we get to actually see the burst of the balloon. That's always been the big mystery. You know, we send them up and we know they come down. We can track them on APRS and everything, but we never knew what happened. But having the camera on there has been really cool.
For copyright, the links for the videos that he's playing right now are in the description below. But in the meantime, let's get back to it.
Again, like I was saying earlier, because it's been a lot harder to get, or impossible these days to get the helium, we've been really focusing on our floaters, what we call the little Pico trackers. And so these are really, really tiny devices that you'll see at the booth if you come by over there. We've got several different examples, and I have a lot of slides I'll show you here real quick too. But some of those payloads are, sometimes there's a CW beacon, and the simplistic simplistic form. We have APRS, which is pretty common. Whisper is very common on some of these. Sometimes we have a combination. We have a couple today we'll be flying with Whisper and APRS at the same time. And then we even have some that have cameras on board. In fact, John brought us one that we had from our friends over in Berlin, Germany, that built for us. It's a real tiny little board with a camera, and I'll show you some of the pictures that we got from that tracker in flight and such. And so we've been around the world several times. Our furthest, most successful has been 4 times, but we're still trying, and it's taken us years to get to that. So it's not something that happens very easily. It usually takes several flights to finally work through all the kinks and find the perfect weather patterns, and all the cycles just have to come together for you.
Sorry about that.
So here's a couple of flight crew pics from the early days. Yeah, Marty, I'm sorry.
The one they launched at the winter last year?
Yes.
It was up for, what, 58 days?
Yeah, yes. In fact, I have a slide that shows that, the one that we launched from this very Hamfest last year. Sure did. And so there's several of our members. Unfortunately, several of these guys are no longer with us, but I definitely wouldn't feel right doing this without giving a lot of credit to these guys that help us get to where we are today.
8, 7.
So here's one of the small trackers. We have a couple of these in the booth. We've flown one already today. We've got another one coming up right after this. The size of that is about 1.5 inches tall. It's very, very small. This is a Zactec tracker. We've got a couple of those that we're flying today again. Again, it's something you can buy for $85, $90 or something like that. And it comes with solar panels and all kinds of good things. So it's a really good way to get started for sure, because you don't have to chase down super caps to help keep it charged up, to have enough energy to fire off Whisper and things like that. It comes with everything it needs. Just add balloon and go, after you program it, of course. And here's one of John's, AB5SS back there, designed his own tracker and really got the weight way down, way down on these things. And he's got one over here at the booth over there, you can see, super tiny, so small that it fits underneath the solar panel array. And here's a slide of, that's what the solar panel array is. That's what is that, John, maybe six inches or something? It's very, very small. And there's John over there. We've tried a couple different balloons. So here's some examples. Probably ought to do it this way. This one, well, this kind of hard to see this, but this balloon is a SBS balloon. It's a commercial grade balloon. Costs about $179 for the ham discount version, and it's about the size of a refrigerator. So it's about 3 foot wide, 3.5 feet wide, and it's like 7 foot tall. And used to, when we were flying these things, we could easily get into the mid 40s and almost 50,000 feet, and they would fly for many, many months very nicely. Unfortunately, there's been some kind of issue that we haven't been able to have that level of success in a long time with those, and because of the high dollar expense of that, we switched to some of these silver Mylars. You'll see we have a couple of these flying at the booth over there. These silver Mylars are only 32 inches. They work good. John's got some clear Chinese balloons, so we call them. And then there's some new Japanese Yokohama balloons that are being used, and they're clear. So, and then we've done some with 2 balloons, trying to get a little extra altitude out of them, because altitude is everything for us. If we can get above all the different type of weather events that might happen around the world, the more success we're going to have, the longer flight we're going to have, things are going to be way better all the way around. So here's one of those trackers I was talking about that has a little micro camera. It looks like a little Raspberry Pi camera. It's very much like it, just a slight different design on it. But I'll show you some of the pictures. So this is where the camera in my backyard. Now, yeah, sadly this really doesn't do it justice, but the video is absolutely incredible how well this looks. Super crispy video, and the real clever concept to this is that it's transmitting these images over normal APRS, no matter where it is in the world. So what Sven has built into the design of this is it steals about 200 characters of the frame. It slices each image into multiple frames and then transmits those images, the frames, I'm sorry, one at a time, over and over and over until it gets to the end of the entire set of frames. When it completes that image, it immediately takes another snapshot and starts sending this over again. So all the data is being received by the normal APRS stations wherever they are in the world. It's piped right into the internet and gets sucked into the server that's over in Berlin, where it gets all put back together. And then sometimes, as you might expect, you're going to have a packet collision. So your collision prevents you from getting that frame to come through, and you might have an image that has, say, 130 frames to it to complete the image, and maybe you dropped like 5 or 6 frames or something. Sven has even written some really cool software into it to accommodate that, where once an hour the balloon, the tracker, I mean, wakes up for like 10 minutes, and you know the window, and based on the images that are missing, it has an ID for that frame. So he's able to enter some data into the APRS network that wherever it is in the world, it will go out the APRS networks up to the balloon, send it the frames that it missed, and it'll automatically resend those frames and fill in the blanks on that image real time. So amazingly brilliant software that he's working. So here's some of the images. Again, that looks kind of rough right there, but they are really very, very crisp. And some of these are like 1,000 feet. Some of them are like 30,000 feet. But it's just amazing. Now, one thing we do find is that as we get higher, like around the 40,000 foot level, it becomes a real problem in that we start getting some bluing in the images or whatever. So kind of weird atmospheric issues, but we're still working on that. So here's another example of one of the trackers that our friends in Germany put together. You see I have a picture of a dime just to try to give it some reference of the size of this thing. So it's barely the size of a micro SD card. And as you can imagine, it's incredibly small and light. Now this one only does APRS, it doesn't do whisper, so we don't have to worry about a long 20-meter antenna or anything. This is John's Pico tracker here, the new one. He's redesigned multiple times, so this just keeps getting better. He's doing some brilliant work, constantly improving these, making them smaller in size, and cranking them out like crazy for us.
Walter, you have to tell them your new toy that you got.
I'm sorry?
Your new toy, so you can solve it.
My new toy.
Your microscopic, whatever, solid.
Oh, microscope. Yeah. Well, John makes it real easy. There's probably a good segment for that. So John has gotten one of these flow ovens. That's a modified toaster oven kind of thing that's really been decked out nicely. When Sven was over here, I'll go back to this other one. We needed to build some of these trackers last year, so we built 4 of these trackers. Normally, the way they do these over in Germany is we've got like a transfer that goes over the top of it, like a stencil, and then you put the solder paste wave over it, and then you put all the components on it, and very meticulously put those micro tiny components, because they are smaller than anything you've ever seen in any radio you have, and then they put it on a hot plate, heat it up. It takes about an hour and a half to heat up, and then it flows the solder, and then they turn it off. It takes another hour or 2 to cool down, and then they now have a tracker tracker. Well, when we built these 4, it took probably about 15 to 20 minutes to put all these components onto the solder paste, and just by laying them down there. We put them in John's flow oven. We pushed go on the front of the oven, and from the time we pushed go till the bell went off that said time to open the door was exactly 5 minutes. So we took hours out of the process by doing it that way. So we need to build a lot more that way very quick.
Are we ready?
Okay, so as Daryl mentioned, or Marty had mentioned, we launched a balloon last year from that was supposed to be for the Greater Houston Hamfest last year. Unfortunately, it got canceled because of COVID shutdown and things like that. So they had a tailgate, a winter tailgate sale, and so Chris was able to take a balloon that one of our friends up in Maryland built the package, got everything put together, and then mailed it down to me so that we could prepare it and actually launch it from here. And so I had a last-minute emergency, so I had to go out of town, but Chris was nice enough to take it out to one of the RC fields over here up the road a ways, and then launched it. So here's a quick shot of what that looks like. As you can see, everything about this is a no-fly day. We got major overcast. We don't fly in overcast. We don't fly in high winds. We have high winds. However, we had to get this thing off the ground and celebrate the Greater Houston Hamfest. So Chris was able to do it. It took a couple hard bounces off the ground, but it went up in the air and did a very good job. And so here's the flight path as it went all the way around the world. Ironically, it made almost a beeline for Houston. Came right down, right directly back to where we were, and then we lost it after that. We don't know if a storm got it or what happened, but it was pretty amazing that it made it all the way around. So it was a big day, a happy time for the Greater Houston Hamfest for sure. Here's one we did. Several of us went out to the Boy Scouts Jamboree on the Air last year. They invited us to, I have a quick shot of one we did year before last for one of the local scout troops up in our area, and they enjoyed it so much that the larger area said, we got to see that too. We want you to come to our headquarters here near downtown Houston, and we want to launch it over there. So this is one of ours that we did for them in October. Now here, it was everything perfect about this launch. The balloon went almost directly straight up. So we had Jerry and Rudy and Jeff, and a whole bunch of them had HF stations and satellite stations and all kinds of things. But we had just a brilliant launch there. And then this one went out in the Atlantic, and what is it? What was it, went all the way around the world. Oh, well, it went on the other side of the world, was coming back around over the Pacific before it finally went silent. And we were watching the weather patterns, and there were some pretty violent storms in that area that was going on at the time. So it's pretty clear that's what happened to this one. But definitely a lot of good flight time out of it. We launched a balloon 2 weeks ago. I guess it was yesterday. John launched a balloon, AB5SS, or BLT 107. It had a great flight, flew all the way overseas and everything, made it almost to the eastern part of China and mysteriously went missing. So you can draw your own conclusion to what happened, but all I can say is that's where we last heard it.
How we doing?
But there's the whisper map at the bottom, so you can see even right before we last heard from it, it was still being picked up by a lot of stations. So. So launch sites. We talked a bit about Wharton County Airport. That's where we fly our poppers from. Our floaters. We used to go to Scobie Field over there up the road a ways, not far from here. But lately we've been launching from Matsky Park in northwest Houston. Matsky Park works out really well for for me. Because I have the hydrogen in the garage. So whenever we need to do a launch, we bring the balloons over to my house. We gas them up and go less than a quarter block just around the corner to a park right across the street, and we launch from there. So we don't have to worry about transporting balloons and accidentally damaging one from rolling around in the back of the cars or anything.
You said hydrogen?
Hydrogen, yes. So here's the tracking sites. There's APRS. We use aprs.fi. You can find that on a lot of other places too, but that's probably the more common one that most of us are using. For Whisper, we use whispernet.org. That's tracking balloons, again, all over the place. HabHub has now been renamed to amateur.sondehub, and that's what also tracks balloons all over the place. Once they've gone into APRS, though, it doesn't track Whisper, so we have to have a way of extracting the data out of the Whisper network and piping it into the APRS network before it shows up on some of these other sites. So here's one that we flew, as I mentioned, that local Jamboree on the Air group we did. We had Daryl's call sign on this one, KC5JAR. We launched it from northwest Houston. It went down south of Puerto Rico, and then then kind of made a dog leg down there. And then it flew right over top of the best drug cartel locations in northern part of South America. So again, plenty of accusations were made, but no proof has been found yet. So. This is what it was looking like on WhisperNet from another balloon that we had that flew across, and you can see right there on the west coast of Africa. And this is what it looks like on the amateur.sonde site. Again, you can see, dozens of balloons up at any given time from other places around the world. And you can, of course, zoom in on those. If you click on them, you can get more detail if you want to find out exactly where it is, what its altitude is, and that kind of information is all out there. So here's some of the trackers that we're flying this weekend. This one we're fixing to do here in a moment as soon as we wrap this up. This is another one from Maurice up in Maryland, W3FGP. It's going to have Whisper on it as well as APRS, so we can actually track it in two different ways. We have another one here from Jerry. Jerry launched one this morning. He has another one we're going to launch. This is one of the Zactec trackers. As you can see, it's on Whisper. By default, it's on Whisper. However, we have a special script that Bill Brown was kind enough to provide us that we can run on a server I have at my house that, again, extracts that data out of the Whisper network and push it into the APRS network so we can spot it, track it, keep up with it a little bit better with a different way of viewing it. Here's one with my call sign on it that we'll also be launching in a few minutes. Another one of the Zactec trackers doing the same thing. It'll be on Whisper as well as APRS. And then here's one that Chris launched this morning. He was kind enough to put some targets on the bottom of it just to kind of help our local Air Force people out in case they get lonely up there. This one does Whisper and APRS.
I heard it not good, not ready.
And here's the one that was launched this morning that Jerry has up there. That one's cruising along pretty good right now. It's kind of hard to see in this picture how small that thing is, but I have one at the booth. It's slightly larger than your thumbnail. It's very, very tiny. So here's some contact details for anybody that might be interested and wanted to keep up with us, see what's going on, or get involved, or just see where we're making attention in the world. There's my email address up there. You can type in K5WH into Google. It'll find me in 100 places. There's a BLT reflector. I definitely encourage you to join that if you're interested in seeing some of this. I also have another ham radio tech notes reflector that I have on groups.io where we do even more beyond balloons, but we especially copy the same information off the balloon side over there. Also on DMR. Several of us are very heavy into DMR, Fusion, D-Star, and things like that. And I built a bridge so they're all linked together. So if you get on any of the AMSAT network, the digital side, since I have everything bridged together, you can come in on D-Star, go out on DMR, and vice versa. You can get to us real easy that way. If nothing else, you can always join us on Zoom. My Zoom channel is up 7x24. We have people from all over the world that are in there, and we are every day, every night, till almost midnight, every night of the week, there's a lot of people, and sometimes later, we're playing with chasing satellites. Jerry's now trying to get us stirred up in EME, so now we're going to have to go spend a lot more money, so we're going to do that. We're doing these balloon stuff that we're doing. We're always playing with SDR radios, trying out new software. The best part is somebody will come pop into the room and said, "Hey, look what I found out. Have you heard about this?" And we say, "No." And they go, "Show it to us." And we get a live demonstration. All of a sudden, everybody's going out to PayPal, and we're buying tons of these things. So be careful. Keep your wallet at home. If you ever come in, could get you in trouble. Anyway, with that, I kind of talked a little bit fast, but let me open up for questions real quick, and then we'll get out and try to get some more targets in the air. Yeah, Daryl?
Tell them about the one that went to sleep and woke up.
We have had several trackers in the past that have been flying around the world, and suddenly they disappear after 2 weeks. And we say, okay, oh gosh, it's terrible, something happened. And then all of a sudden, a week or 2 weeks, even we've had some a month later, all of a sudden wake up again and they're squawking perfectly for another week or two, and then they go asleep again. So that definitely happens. We have some other events. Jerry's run into this, and I know Ray and the guys are friends from up in Brenham, launched a balloon, looking really good, flying great, and all of a sudden it disappears. You don't know what happened, so everybody's questioning. All of a sudden, 2 or 3 days later, it's transmitting perfectly somewhere, caught in a tree or power line or something, and for weeks the thing is coming up, lighting up every day, transmitting just great. But you don't know where it is, can't get to it. Sometimes it's places in the deep swamps of Louisiana that you don't want to go find it. But it's entertaining at the least. Let me say that.
Thank you to all my Patreon supporters. You can support me on Patreon. There is a link in the description below. And to all my tankers out there, go forth and conquer.